Hey, this is Chase and Chaz Foraker. We're here again doing another episode of our podcast about Japan. Today we've decided to talk a little bit about uh, purchasing various items throughout Japan, whether you're looking for souvenir shopping or you're looking for a TV or maybe even a pet. Just different types of shopping you can do in Japan, and how those are going to vary from your experiences in America. Since I'm a little more focused on the tourism aspect of Japan, I'll be talking a lot more about the souvenirs and that kind of stuff, where my brother Chaz has had more of the living experience in Japan, so he'll be speaking about the things like electronic shopping and that kind of thing. How you doing tonight?
Man, doing good.
Good to hear.
Had a wonderful 3 hours of Taekwondo practice.
Yeah, it's always good. Nice and build up a nice sweat and get your heart pumping.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, it's a great day. Had a great day at work. Had some good exercise. 2 exercise sessions today, which is nice. So, and some great dinner here over with you and your lovely family. So, I appreciate that. But if you want to just go ahead and jump right into it, I'll let you begin talking about some of the things that you've had experience buying in Japan.
Yeah, cool. So the first time that we lived in Japan, we actually lived outside of the Nagoya area, maybe about 15 minutes by train to Nagoya.
Right.
And we also had a car, which was very unusual. It was like a surprise thing. Surprise, you're going to be a dispatched English teacher. So I went from looking at a job that was just teaching English. I figured, there'll be a school, or I'll be in a school, teaching English. And we get there, and they like throw me keys and say, here, this little hand drawn map again. This was like 2006, so like, at least there they didn't really have smartphones. They didn't have maps online. It was literally some guy drew a picture on a piece of paper, said, go for like 5 minutes until you see this red sign with this little kanji on it, and then turn right and then go. I mean, it was
Right.
really difficult.
Oh my gosh.
Especially, and I love driving. I've grown up. I started driving the minute I could. Really into cars and driving. So someone who isn't, I'm sure there were actually a couple other teachers that had a lot of trouble and ended up wrecking the car and everything else. So,
oh my goodness.
Some pretty hilarious stories. But so the first time we're living there, it's somewhat rural, and living there is very different. We're not really focused immediately, at least, on getting souvenirs or getting fun stuff. We weren't in Tokyo, so we weren't like, just bombarded with all the cool stuff to buy and all the cool shops and cool places.
Right.
We were more limited. We had, just tiny little grocery store. It was very similar to the one that was near our place later in Koshigaya. There was like a barber shop, and just very few things in that area at the time. And so going into the grocery store for the first time was really an unusual experience. I mean, we didn't know what to buy. We didn't know, because it's just totally different food. We liked Japanese food, but we didn't know how to cook it at all.
Right.
So it was a matter of, I think that first time we didn't really cook much. I think we found like the little frozen section, and they had like gyoza and some, onpan, like different things like that, that we could make pretty easily. I think later we maybe made karage, just some really basic stuff. But it was almost to the point where you go into the store and you're like, oh, I don't know what to buy. I mean, we can buy like bread and eggs, but really super overpriced cereal, and they have like maybe 3 kinds of cereal. But yeah, very much not economical to try to live like you would here, buying those kinds of things like peanut butter and cereal and all that. So we, for the most part, ended up just eating out all the time, which, to be honest, was probably about the same expense-wise, compared to shopping, just because, I don't know, I think over there the economies of scale are much better because they have a lot of really tiny restaurants. So the people that own the restaurants are usually running them, so they can, make their food much cheaper, and it's not like here we have a corporation that owns like 5,000 restaurants and they have to hit all these targets and whatnot. So yeah, we ate out most of the time.
Right. Anything that you saw when you walked in that grocery store that you saw that just kind of made you think, wait, what?
The produce is always really interesting in Japan. First off, it's like such a smaller selection of produce. I think over there, since most things are having to be flown in or shipped in, that you're a lot more limited, to things, especially like when you're in season. Like here in America, it's like you can get almost anything you want at any point. There is no like, oh, it's not in season.
Right.
There's a few things, but not much.
Mm-hmm.
There, I think they're very susceptible to like, oh, well, it's not strawberry season, so we don't have any strawberries. And
right.
But not just that, but like fruit. Apples would be, wrapped in this little fancy, styrofoam doily thing with a little cloth on it, and it would be like 1,000 yen or some, ridiculous price.
Right.
Any kind of melons would be just outrageous. Now, we didn't know at the time, but, later we found out that part of the reason with that is that the markets, even more so than here, there is some of this to an extent here, they choose the absolute best, pick of the crop, totally, perfect fruit to put on their shelves for those purposes. And I don't think a lot of people, a lot of Japanese buy those things. Maybe like the rich ones, I don't know. But if you go to like a farmer's market, which are actually pretty popular in Japan, they'll often just have them on the side of the streets or wherever, just someone selling certain, fruits or vegetables.
Right.
They're less perfect, it's just whatever they grew, and they're like dirt cheap. You can get pretty much anything dirt cheap.
Yeah, that was one of the things that for some reason I was really excited about this last time I went around. I just had this idea of I need to eat more fruit than I typically eat when I go to Japan. And I had some great cantaloupe and some really good strawberries and some really, really good pineapple. And it's not like it's the best I've ever had or anything like that, but it was just so juicy and sweet, and wasn't terribly expensive. Like you said, I got it at a kind of like a side shop on the big long road in Market Street, and it was delicious. What about seeing things like I know I've been into a couple grocery stores just to look around, and sometimes the eggs are refrigerated, sometimes the eggs are not refrigerated. I know that kind of weirds me out a little bit. What about the checkout process? Anything different there as far as the way the checkout process goes, opposed to what you would typically see at like a Walmart or something like that?
Most of the places that we shopped at, were anywhere from small little grocery stores like the one we were talking about to kind of bigger ones. They have big grocery stores like Justco and Aeon and some of those big giant ones. But most of them are still, there's, at least as of the last time I was there, there's no self-checkout type, deal. Most of them, they do ring up your groceries. It's just one person there, ringing up your groceries. You pay, and then you take all your stuff in a basket. Usually you have a little hand basket.
Right.
Some of the bigger ones you'll have a cart, but you then generally take all your stuff over to a little station. It's kind of like Aldi, actually. Like here, they'll have a big long counter along the wall, and they'll have little bags, or they'll just give you the bags and you take them with you and plastic bag all of your stuff up, and then head out.
This last time, just a couple weeks ago at this point, we went to a 24-hour Seiyu, I think it was, grocery store chain, and they had a self-checkout. They had 6 self-checkout registers.
Oh, wow.
And this wasn't the biggest grocery store, but it was a decent sized grocery store. Probably very similar to the one that you were closest to when you lived in Saitama. Maybe a tiny bit bigger because I think this one had a second floor that I actually go to.
Yeah, there was a say that was like maybe 15 minutes by bicycle that we used to go. We had so many grocery stores around us in Saitama. It was like, I guess because of all the families living there.
Right. And if I remember right, some of the places, if not all of them, and I think it's kind of like this at Aldi's, if you need a bag, they'll charge you for it. Now, it's not much. It's just like something crazy, like 35 yen, 50 yen. Like, it's not much. But the ones that I've been to, I believe I was charged for the bags, which I like the idea of that just because it helps reduce plastic use. It's encouraging people to bring their own bags, bring like a nice big bag. And that's kind of one of the things that I think I'll jump right into just real quick, since I'm going to be talking more about the souvenir stuff coming up. Since we're on this topic, that is a great souvenir if you're planning on meeting a Japanese friend, whether it's a new friend or a friend from a long time, especially females, but even I think even a male would appreciate this to an extent. But they really like branded, labeled, reusable bags, like a bag you would see at like a Trader Joe's or something like that. That can be kind of a fashionable and cool thing, and it's a very useful gift too. So if you're ever thinking about the opposite way, not just bringing souvenirs home, but bringing souvenirs from your country to Japan, that's definitely something to consider. It's one of the best, most well-received gifts that I've ever given anyone. Is a very inexpensive, less than $10 reusable bag. It's definitely a great suggestion for that. But anyway, I'll let you continue on.
But yeah, so you mentioned the Ayou Store, and a lot of the bigger stores like Jesco and those, we don't really have this here, but it'll be like a grocery store, like a big full-size grocery store comparable to Kroger, Vaughn's or Ralph's or whatever you have near you on the first floor. And usually they'll have sometimes the really big ones, they'll have like a food court in there, like a smaller food court. And they'll have like a bakery, and they'll have a few other different, kind of like an H Mart here, a few little different things in there.
Right.
But then on the second floor, they'll have stationery and office supplies and other random things.
Almost like the kind of stuff you'd see in like a dollar store, it sounds like.
And just all kinds of useful things, like household items maybe. And then maybe on the third floor, they'll have, clothes. It'll be like men's clothing or something.
Right.
And I guess it's similar to Walmart. I mean, because Walmart has that kind of stuff. It's just being on separate floors, and it feels more like you're in a mall.
Right.
But it's a grocery store. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I love that feeling of, like one of my favorite shops, which is kind of funny, which is the Uniqlo store. I went to a Uniqlo in Ikebukuro, and the first floor is kind of general merchandise from a lot of newer releases, and you go to the second floor and it's women's, and you go to the third floor and it's just like you said, it just feels like you're in a mall, but you're just in this one single store. And I love that. You get the same feeling with a lot of stores in Japan, but like places like Don Quixote, where you're going up, and each floor is sectioned off in a certain way for certain goods. I always think that's really cool to, travel upwards and continue exploring new product. It's always fun to me. Plus, it's the same in America. You just go to the section you're looking for, but I like, looking at the map and think, okay, I need to go to the third floor, because the third floor is where all the stuff I need is, and I can just go right there, and there's all the stuff I'm looking for. And you'll see that same thing, and you go to a nice large anime goods store. You'll see the same thing. First floor is comic books and posters, and the second floor is pillows and buttons and keychains, and the third floor is figures, and it's always Always nice to look at that map and see, okay, this is where I go. Where in America, you kind of have to like walk into the store, and because everything's so far and spread out, like you're looking across, you're saying, okay, where's the hardware section? Okay, it's down there. You're walking all the way down the food aisles to get to the other side of the store. Where in Japan, you're just in the store, up the stairs, and you're there. You know?
Yeah, everything's more compact.
Right.
But yeah, just the number of items they have in a given space. I mean, stores like, Big Camera and Yodobashi Camera. I mean, those are just like monster stores that have so many products. I mean, it's not like, oh, well, you go to Walmart and you're looking for a scale, and it's like, okay, well, they have like 2 or 3 scales. You go into a Yodobashi Camera, and like you said, you look at, they have like a label for each floor, and you'll see, okay, health and beauty, and it's just like one of the little areas of goods on a particular floor.
Right.
You'll go up to that floor and you'll find scales, and they'll have like 100 scales of all different kinds. Mm-hmm. It's like almost like Amazon is just like blown up in this store
with them all displayed. You can see how they look fully. That's one of the things I really love about those type of stores, is they do a really good job of showing displays and having one right there on the shelf that you can look and touch and feel, which some of our stores do are getting better about doing that, but a lot of places you're kind of looking at the box and kind of looking around to see if you can find an associate to ask him, like, hey, can I open this and look at it?
Can I open it?
You're feeling, okay, do they think I'm stealing this? Are they looking at me on camera right now and thinking, this guy's open up this box or this product? But that's one thing I really like, is all the displays in there. Like you said, tons and tons of options.
Yeah, there's just, it seems like there's so many cool stores. I mean, it says it's foreign. It's always, just a fun experience because it's new and different. Remember, going to the home stores were really neat, like equivalent of like Home Depot or Lowe's, that same kind of a store.
Right.
They have all kinds of like hardware. They'd even have like furniture. It was kind of one of the places where you get cheap little furniture for our first apartment. Yeah, we'd go there and get just random odds and ends. Oddly enough, they had pets. I mean, they had like a little pet section in the home store,
right,
with dogs and cats and stuff. Pet food. That was probably the closest place to get reasonably priced pet supplies.
Right.
I think we got her crate, Daisy's crate, and some other different things there. But yeah, just in bicycles. That's the place where they took my bike in for repair and gave me the loaner bike.
Right.
That kind of leads to another interesting topic, is, when you are buying day-to-day goods and grocery stuff, how do you get it home? Here we're so used to, driving everywhere that there's no question. I mean, you drive to the store and get your stuff, you throw it in the back of your car and go home. And there, I remember it always being kind of a challenge, and we'd often forget. Amanda and I would go to a store and end up buying, a bunch of food, and then be like, oh no, how are we gonna get this home? So we'd both, be on our bicycles, and we had, the big basket in the front and the flat little mount thing on the back where you could put usually you'd put like a big box. We started putting like our suitcase. We got like the smaller suitcase and like strapped it on there with bungee cords.
That's a good idea.
So we'd end up having both of our baskets full, the back both stuffed with, things in a suitcase. And oftentimes we'd end up with like bags, like just hanging off of our handlebars. And the two of us would be, riding our bicycles. It was only maybe, 15 minutes from that closest store.
Right.
But I remember, certain other things, like we had to go a little bit further to the Ayou grocery store to get like a curtain rod, like a shower curtain rod, or maybe it was a drape, some big rod thing. And it's like, okay, I guess I just held it like a lance under my shoulder and rode my bicycle home with one hand. It was like a lance. Everyone's looking at me like I'm just this crazy person. But it's stuff like that, I mean, that you have to think about. And it was even, crazier, we finally found out that we weren't all that far from a Costco and an IKEA,
Right.
and we loved Costco over there. It was right around the time where we'd been there like a year. We were starting to really miss, Western foods, stuff like cheese and good bacon, and
Mm-hmm.
it was mostly breakfast foods and maybe like Mexican food, stuff like that was really the main things we missed.
Right.
Good pizza, good cheap pizza. And so Costco was wonderful because they had almost, it wasn't like completely like an American Costco, but very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
They had the pizza station with the pizza is exactly the same. All you can drink Coke, which, fountain drinks, which over there is not common, especially wanting to say it was like you could get a hot dog and a fountain drink for like 500 yen, I think.
Wow.
It was some crazy price.
We're typically just for the like an all you can drink fountain drink is going to cost you $10.
Yeah.
At the 1,000 yen.
So it was. I mean, that place was packed all the time. Every time we went there, it's like everyone was there, like eating pizza, hot dogs, and drinks.
Right.
Because you could tell it was this like novelty that they didn't really have.
Did you see a lot of foreigners in the Costco, or was it just mainly Japanese people? Or
it was for the most part Japanese people. We saw a few, not too many. I actually saw a couple foreigners that were working there, which was pretty interesting. I think Costco, like for management type positions, I think they tend to send people over there,
right,
from here, to work over there, and because they know how to run the store.
Right.
I guess they probably hired a Japanese person that speaks English to, kind of work around that. But, but yeah, so in order to get stuff home, so Costco, if people don't know, it's like a bulk type store.
Mm-hmm.
Now we weren't buying like crazy stuff. I mean, they have stuff that is like more normal sized. We weren't buying like the 500 count toilet paper pack or anything crazy like that. But still, it was bigger sized items. So what we ended up having to do is we would bring in our 2 big suitcases, and the first time they let us just take our suitcases right in. I guess they probably were like, "Oh, they're foreigners. They don't know what they're doing." So we took our suitcases in, bought all of our stuff. And again, at Costco, it's the same there as here. They just put all your stuff in the cart and you have to go, package it up and take it home.
Right.
So we'd go outside in a little table area and just start piling everything into our big, huge 2 suitcases that we had. And then we'd proceed to take those suitcases and we would get on a little bus that would actually went on a loop from Costco to IKEA to the station and then back. It was just going in a constant loop. And so we would get on that bus, get off at the station, and we would go from that station to, on that train line, just a few minutes to another station. And then we would have to switch lines. So the stations were right next to each other. So we'd literally walk, across the street to the other station.
Right.
Get on that train line. And that one took us home. So all in all, it was maybe a 30-minute, trip getting back home. But it was like several flights of stairs. And very crowded train stations, very crowded trains.
Right.
We got used to it after a while, but it was pretty strange. And I think people probably thought we were nuts. They're seeing this giant foreigner carrying like this huge, they probably had to weigh 100 pounds.
Right.
These suitcases. And Amanda, of course, couldn't carry them. So I have like 2, giant suitcases over my arms, going down the stairs.
Right. What about like really large items like electronics? You ever have any experience buying any electronics over there that are larger items?
Yeah, the first time we lived there, it was right around the time when the flat screen TVs were becoming mainstream. In Japan, they were still exorbitantly priced in America. And I remember being, so excited to go there and buy a flat screen TV that was like, half the price of what it would have been here.
Right.
And it wasn't huge, you know. I think it was like a 42 inch or something, so it wasn't this huge TV, but it was still pretty big.
Right.
And we bought it in Nagoya, which was like a 20-minute, 15, 20-minute train ride from our station. And then once we were at our station, we were another probably, I mean, walking, it would have probably been 20 minutes, 30 minutes walking. Or, you had a bike, it would be a lot quicker. So yeah, we bought it. It took a while for us to buy it because they were insistent that, it wouldn't work in America because it wasn't an American TV. And we're like, well, first off, they're like, it would work in America because maybe we just hook stuff into our TVs. We don't use like the built-in tuner card is basically what he was trying to say. And we were living there, so we didn't really care if it worked in America or not. But we got it. And so what's really neat is anything relatively larger or any electronics. I mean, even they did this with our rice cooker. They'll wrap the package. They'll have like a thick sheet of paper that usually has their company logo all over it, and they'll kind of wrap that around the package. And then they'll build this like little harness with a handle out of like tie rope, or like nylon kind of like rope, cord, something like that.
Right.
And they do it to where you can like hold it with a little handle. And so most things that are smaller, like a little rice cooker or a little DVD player, computer, anything like that, you can hold it with all your bags and you just have this little thing to hold.
Right.
So I remember the guy was he first asked, oh, well, can you, we'll take it down out to the back and we'll meet you there, to load your TV. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about, load the TV, And it finally clicked, and I'm like, yeah, we don't have a car. We came here, by train and whatever. And he was just like totally shocked. He's like, oh, how are you going to get this home? It wasn't that big of a box. I mean, it was, something that you could carry with a handle pretty easily. So he's like, okay, I'll try to make something you can hold it by. So he, wrapped it like several more times than normal and put this huge giant harness thing on it with, like triple handles, all to make it super strong, and handed it to me, and it was perfect. It worked perfectly. So we took that. It was like at nighttime. It was after we'd eaten dinner. And we made our way back home. And I remember people just looking at me like I was the craziest person in the world on a train holding this giant TV.
Which is so funny to me because, I never really see things like that. I've never seen like a Japanese person carrying like a ridiculously oversized item on the train. But you don't really have many options. I mean, not everyone has cars. Like, are you taking a taxi to the shop to buy it? And then, I'm really curious. Like, do they pay for delivery? Is that typical? I guess.
Yeah, I think most people, the little what is it? I forget. Is it the Tokyo? It's a little like cat. It's like the little mama cat carrying the baby cat in its mouth is their little emblem. It's they're like the biggest,
like
forwarding kind of company.
Right.
Or the first, pretty much any time that we went to Japan with a Japanese person leading the group, they would have that company. They would ahead of time pay for that company to basically get all of our luggage at the airport and then like send it to wherever we were staying. So we didn't even have to do anything with our luggage, at all. It was like already at the house or wherever.
I actually debated using a service like that this last time just because I was traveling with, some older people, our parents, and I thought about, that might be a good idea, but with our trip, it was so easy. I mean, just hop on a bus and then we're there. Don't really have to carry your luggage anywhere. But it seems like they do have a lot of forwarding delivery type services over there. So I'd really be curious to know how reasonably priced they are. Because I know for reference, like you go to a store like Home Depot or Lowe's, you're trying to buy patio furniture to have it delivered. they don't have any kind of special promotion going on, you're probably paying anywhere from $50 to $120 to have something delivered.
Yeah.
So it'd be really curious to see um, how much that kind of costs over there. Do stores have what kind of delivery radius does a typical store have, or how quick is it? Or is it next day? We'll get it in a week?
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to know those things.
Yeah. My only experience, which is perfect for comparing to here, was with IKEA. We bought, in our last apartment, we bought pretty much all of our furniture from IKEA. And we had to have that delivered. It was like a bed and a mattress and all this stuff.
Right.
And the delivery was dirt cheap. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, it was in like the $10 to $20 range.
Wow.
Really,
was it quick
really,
too?
really cheap. It was like the next day.
Did they do any kind of setup for you, or just drop off boxes, or?
The guy offered to set it up, but I think at that point I wasn't really sure, where I was going to put things.
Right.
So I just told him it was okay. I wanted to, set it up myself. But trying to think what else. Well, we had other things delivered too. We had the washing machine and the fridge were delivered. I'm wanting to say delivery was included with the price.
Right.
I don't remember paying any. And it was like at a used shop. Which is really, so that's something that's kind of really cool that we don't have a lot of here. Or at least here we have it, but it's kind of like has this stereotype around it. Like,
yeah, what's up with that? Why do we have these items that are cheap, affordable items that we sell? At least what I'm thinking of, I think of kind of two different things. You think of things like secondhand shops, like places like Goodwill. Or in Georgia, in our area, you'll occasionally see like a Hispanic-owned shop that's like, secondhand appliances or whatever it may be. But then you also have these stores that are typically kind of right next to those secondhand shops that are going to be, new products at a rent-to-own.
yeah.
That's kind of like our equivalent almost. It's like just rent-to-own. Instead of buying something used, you can just get this predatory, terrible loan program.
Thing will be broken and busted up by the
Right.
time you pay it off.
And if you ever pay it off, you miss a payment on it, and they come and repo it, or unfortunately, I guess fortunately, I've never made any purchases in those type of places. But that's kind of what I think of when I think of that same. Besides places like Goodwill, and like I said, some of those other secondhand appliance stores we have in our area. Yeah, I don't know why we have such a stereotype against, used things, or maybe it's not American wide. Maybe it's just us that has that that preconceived notion that used things are bad.
Yeah. Well, here, we've bought several different things used that we've, really got a great deal on, but it's always like person to person. Nowadays it's like, Facebook Marketplace or some, for sale group online.
Right.
Craigslist or something like that where you found something. There's really no stores. Like over there are used stores everywhere for everything under the sun. Everything from, manga and DVDs, and, back when they were popular, electronics, books, just general stores where they would have everything from appliances to furniture to bicycles, clothes, but it's all like brand names. They're huge into name brand,
right.
Major label clothes, just pretty much everything. And the other side of it too is that when you go to sell stuff to these stores, they give you very decent prices for what you're selling.
Right.
It's not like here where,
it's a donation almost.
Basically, you just bought something from them for $50, and then you come to sell it a couple weeks later, and they're going to give you $5. And it's not like GameStop or something like that.
Yeah, the closest place, and it still kind of has that same concept of getting paid nothing for what you're selling to them, but it's the ones that are a general merchandise is kind of similar to walking into a Goodwill. Of course, I wouldn't say they'd have less merchandise, but they'd have it in a smaller section, Honestly, I've only been inside of one of those stores once, if I'm not mistaken, and that was when we went to buy my bicycle.
Mm.
That might have just been a bicycle shop, but I thought that they maybe had some other used items as well.
Yeah.
And it was a great. I think I paid it was less than $50. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
For a great quality bicycle with gear changes and a bell.
Yeah.
All sorts of cool features. Big enough for the 6'5", formerly 300-pound, man, to ride on. And like I said, great price.
Yeah. I mean the washer and the refrigerator that I bought. I remember going. Of course, I went, to like Yodobashi Camera and like a few of the big electronic stores, and they were just exorbitant. I mean, even for the cheapest refrigerator and washer, it was way more than what I wanted to pay. And there was a huge used store nearby that had giant section of used appliances, and they all looked pretty much brand new.
Right.
And it was like, it was so cheap. I mean, the refrigerator was like 5,000 yen. Washing machine was maybe the same. I mean, it was just dirt cheap. I think the only thing I ended up not buying, because it was kind of expensive, was that little oven thing that they have in most kitchens.
Right.
It's like a 2 maybe 3 burner stove with like a tiny little toaster oven sized oven underneath, where they usually like grill fish or maybe toast. I don't know. But those were still very expensive, even used. They were still 20, 30, 40,000 yen depending.
Wow.
And we didn't really plan on cooking anything. That time when we were living there, we were both working. We didn't really. And at that point, I was actually the only one there. Amanda hadn't come over yet.
Right.
And they basically would not turn on our hot water until we had a range hooked up, some sort of range. So I bought this tiny little 1 burner range thing that I hooked up to the gas. And I remember calling the gas company and saying, okay, I'm ready, come hook up the gas. And they came in. They're like, what is this? You have this one, like, this is, I'm like, no, this is what I'm going to do. We don't really cook. I just want hot water so we can take a warm shower and bath.
Right.
I'd taken like a week's worth of cold, and it was like in February too, so it was like ridiculous.
That sounds miserable.
Just a lot of little things that I guess we can get into in another episode about setting up things for living over there. It's just,
I imagine.
It's hilarious. Some things are so advanced and modern, and some things are just like, oh my gosh.
Well, just the very little, not to dwell on the topic too much, since like you said, we can cover it in another episode, but my little experience with it shows that a lot of Japanese society is really by the book. So it's like they have a policy in front of them, and it's like if you're falling outside of that policy, it's almost like you're in one of those moments where you don't know what to do. You're just looking like, oh my gosh, I can't deviate from this path. I can't deviate from this path. So I think there's a lot of those situations where you fall into this kind of red tape, and things are a little more complicated than they need to be sometimes. Which I'm sure you can say the same thing about some of our processes, but I definitely can understand how you could feel that way for sure.
Yeah, and if you deviate, if you're like a customer in the situation or whatever, and you deviate from their expected path, like, it's hilarious. I mean, they don't know what to do. I remember, the thing that comes to mind is like one time I put the little train ticket. This was the first time when I went on my study abroad. I put my little, this is when you still had these little train tickets instead of like a Passmo card or Suica card. You had a little ticket that you'd put in the machine as you got off the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I put it in the wrong end, and it like messed the whole thing up. And the guy's like, he didn't know what to do.
Yeah, that's never happened before.
He like stopped the whole thing, and like he was like fashioned something out of a paper clip and was like trying to get it out of the machine.
Anything else that you can think of that you want to talk about when you're thinking about things that you've bought or experiences you've had when buying things? Anything else big really come to mind?
I mean, there's a lot of typical things. I mean, prices, of course, are just really strange. You'll find that certain things are way more expensive over there than they are here. But it's not. So many people focus on Japan, say, especially Tokyo, and say, oh, it's just the most expensive place in the world to live. And I remember reading one article where the guy, said, oh, Japan's so expensive. Every morning I wake up and I get my New York Times newspaper and it's like $10, and then I go to Starbucks and it's like $10 equivalent, and then I want to go have lunch at TGI Fridays and it's like $30, and then if I go have dinner at Longhorn Steakhouse, it's or what is it, Outback Steakhouse, it's like just twice the price that it would be in America. It's like, okay, yeah, I mean, if you try to live like an American who eats those kinds of things all the time, you're gonna have a bad time. It's gonna be very expensive. But I mean, those first few months that I was there before Amanda came over by myself, I mean, I hardly spent any money. I was eating like ramen, sushi, all Japanese foods at restaurants for dinner.
Right.
Breakfast, I would pick up something at like a 7-Eleven or whatever. Weekends, I'd maybe go to like Via de France or some little cafe and get something, but I don't think it was ever even comparable to the prices over here.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know really what they're talking about. I mean, it was cheaper over there because we didn't have cars. We didn't have to pay for car insurance. Health insurance was almost nothing. It was like $30-something a month.
Wow.
For full coverage health insurance. So, I mean, all in all, I think it was, significantly cheaper.
I think in the past you had mentioned that your utilities were quite a bit cheaper. Like your internet was really cheap, and I think a couple of your other utilities you said were, maybe not super cheap compared to America, but, reasonably priced for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the water was reasonable. The internet at the time was like amazing speed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm wanting to say it was like what we have just now, but this was in 2010. And it was cheap. It was like, I think it was maybe 5,000 yen a month, something like that. The phone at the time, like, I think it was just because of Japan's very backwards in some things. So I think at this particular time when I lived there, smartphones like iPhones and Android phones weren't really like huge. They hadn't quite caught on yet. They'd caught on here. I mean, the iPhone, I think it was like the 3GS is what I got when I went over there. So it had caught on really like wildfire here. But so many people, all the teachers in the school were like, what is that? What are you looking at? What is it? And I'd have to explain, like, oh, it's basically like a computer in my pocket. I can go online and look at email and watch videos and all this stuff. And they were just like astonished. But the way the phone bill worked at the time was that you paid like a flat fee per month, which was like maybe 3,000 yen, some really, really cheap fee. And you got unlimited data, for that fee. And then if you wanted to call, within Japan, you paid like some tiny amount per minute, but it was like a per minute type thing. So if you talked a lot, it would probably end up being fairly expensive. You'd probably still end up in like the, $80, $90, $100 range, kind of like you are today with our, big data plans. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I would occasionally answer my phone for work or whatever, but so yeah, I was basically getting free unlimited super high speed at the time compared to here. Phone plan for like $30-$40, and it really saved me. Often I'd be at the school, left alone with like nothing to do, the only person sitting in the teacher room just waiting for my next class. And I'd be like, okay, let's go online, check out what was going on.
Excuse me, I still have a theory that the smartphone didn't become dominant in Japan until the case came out that had the additional piece of plastic hanging off of it so people could attach their dongles and charms and whatnot to their smartphones. Because I remember having that same experience of going over there in 2010, and I had a Droid, which is a great smartphone at the time, and I was showing one of my Japanese friends my phone, and they're looking at their little flip phone, and I'm sliding out my screen, and it reveals a full QWERTY keyboard, and I'm pulling up YouTube videos on it, and they were just blown away. Like you said, what is this? Trying to touch the screen, it was. I almost hate to say it was really foreign to them, but it was definitely a significant difference from the most commonly seen phones at the time. And then by the time I came back the next time, it was all smartphones with phone games everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, phone game culture took over hard over there.
Yeah, that was very much, and it was even kind of like in Tokyo, you saw more people, even 2010, 2011, in Tokyo, more and more people had, smartphones, but then once you got out more into the rural areas, it was, a little bit more behind the times, I think.
Right.
But yeah, that's funny. The phones, I think they're probably more used and more popular over there, than here at this point.
Right. Yeah, especially all that downtime on the train. It's we have a law in our state that we aren't supposed to look at our phones when we're driving or touch them. So they're getting bussed and trained around all day. It's a lot easier to look at a phone. Yeah, it seems like certain apps like Snapchat or some equivalent is very popular over there. But like I said, I see a lot of phone games, especially with the male population. Whether it's a 14-year-old kid or see older 6-year-old man, playing some phone game, anime-based phone game or whatever it may be.
Yeah, well, I think Pokemon Go is big over there.
Definitely. I think it's, I hate to say it's died down because I don't really know much about the Pokemon Go culture over there, but I know that there's a lot of famous spots. There's a lot of places that people go and congregate, and it'll be a big group of people playing Pokemon. Whether or not they're interacting with each other, it's just
probably not.
It's just a big open area or a good place with a lot of seating for a Pokestop.
Yeah. Speaking of phone games, that Ragnarok mobile game is actually coming out, or just came out a few days ago
in Japan. Huh.
And so I think that would be kind of interesting to see the difference.
Right. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Be curious to see what it takes to get on the Japanese servers. Anything else that you want to talk about?
That's all that really comes to mind for now.
Sure. Well, I'll start talking about some of the things I want to talk about, and if you think of anything or want to interject, like always, feel free. Like I said earlier in the podcast, I have more experience taking vacation in Japan, and one of my favorite things to do when I'm in Japan is buy people souvenirs. That, especially my niece and nephew, your children. Nothing brings my heart more joy than looking through these shops and finding things that they think will be cool, or things that'll stand out from their friends, and maybe inspire a little bit of jealousy. But I love buying items for my coworkers and my parents and grandparents and my close friends. So it's one of those things that every day is an opportunity to find some cool souvenir. And over the years, I've kind of learned a couple little tricks. One of those tricks is, reading the label, which isn't a very hard trick. But I've definitely been in those situations where I've bought a souvenir, thought, oh yeah, that looks cool. I give it to someone. They look at me and say, this says made in China on it. And that's the most defeating feeling, just to travel to another country, to buy a souvenir, to give it to the person, and the only thing they could think of this isn't even from the place you went. This was made in China. You could have bought this here, is basically what they're telling you,
Pretty
in
much.
that moment. So be careful when you're looking for souvenirs in Japan. Look for stickers that say, made in Japan. Look for the labels that will tell you, made in China. Stay away from that stuff unless let's say you just really like it. It's something that you're interested in, or there's plenty of things that are made in China that are for sale for only Japan. Like a lot of like your Pokemon Center goods and a lot of the Hello Kitty merchandise that you can find, like things like that. You'll see we made in other countries, but then supposedly they'll be for sale in Japan only.
Yeah, and then it'll have that other label. It'll say, for sale in Japan only. Which isn't made in Japan, but it at least is special because you could only get it in Japan.
Right. Usually, I can't say usually, but a lot of those items would be like Japanese themed or Japanese related goods. I think a lot of people hate these shops just because they're very tourist, trap looking, but I go to them every time. They're like just your duty free shops you'll find in the middle of Akihabara. They have some really great items, whether or not it's different cups, tea sets. They usually have a nice selection of djembe, which is probably my favorite gift to, especially for children. I love bringing my niece and nephew different djembe every year. Whenever I tell them, "Hey, Uncle Chase is going to Japan. I'm going to get you some souvenirs. What do you want me to get you?" My nephew always tells me, "Please get me a djembe. Please get me that same little outfit you got me last year, but get me one in a different color." And it's always so fun to look for those. And it's one of those. That's one of those things where, hey, if it says "Made in China" on it, I honestly probably wouldn't care as long as it is cool and comfortable to wear. But if I'm buying like a tea set, you probably don't want that tea set made in China.
Yeah. Which it's similar to here. I mean, they have kind of the same situation we have, where more and more of all their stuff is made in China.
Right.
So it can be challenging to find, especially like day-to-day type goods. I mean, out like here, almost everything's made in China.
Yeah.
It's probably harder here to find stuff that's not made in China.
Especially stuff that's made in America.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find stuff that's not made in China, made in Venezuela or wherever.
In Mexico or something, yeah. But yeah, and they have actual shops. They have some shops that'll actually be, I forget the name of a few of them. They have ones that are like, the name of the shop is some sort of form of like, made in Japan goods.
Right. I'm not 100% sure. Isn't Tokyo Hands, isn't that kind of one of those shops? Or do they have more just general merchandise? It might be more general merchandise.
They have a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm sure they have quite a bit of made in Japan goods. I always think of like the huge giant floor of stationery stuff. Which a lot of people don't realize, but Japan is very advanced when it comes to like pens and pencils and those kinds of things. They like keep innovating, like the mechanics behind mechanical pencils and pens. To the point. I mean, it's kind of silly to us because especially nowadays, I mean, it seems like you just use computers all the time. We're not using pens and paper, pen and paper and pencil. But if you hold one of these, $10, $15 Japanese pencils, I mean, you can tell the difference. They're like perfectly weighted, and it's like the difference of like using like a faucet that's like a $10 cheap plastic faucet versus something that's like a $200 faucet that you can feel the action and the joints and everything.
Right.
It's just so well articulated.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I'm constantly looking for when I'm in Japan, and this will resonate with some of the people that could be watching, is I have a good friend of mine that is obsessed with Dragon Ball. and Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super and all things related to Dragon Ball. So when I first went to Japan, I was in a stage of my life where I was really into the anime culture and all that kind of stuff. So I one of the first places I wanted to go to was Akihabara and look around, and, go figure shopping, and I did. I went and bought a bunch of great stuff, and I still have all of it, but that interest has faded a little bit, over time. But I still do have a big desire to go to figure shops when I'm in Japan, just because I think the art and like the detail is just so impressive on some of this stuff. I mean, I personally, if I'm looking for something for myself, it's usually something kind of retro. But because my friend has this obsession with Dragon Ball, and I tell him every year, hey man, I'll buy you a couple figures and bring you back some stuff. This most recent time, he gave me some money to spend and said, hey, buy me some really cool ones this time. And, just going through these shops and finding, different stores that'll focus on different genres or different timelines. There'll be like a retro store that'll have stuff from the 80s and, the older. And you'll go to some stores that'll just be like only stuff that's brand new, nothing from last year even. So one of the things I always recommend if you're figure shopping, especially if you're looking at more retro figures, you're not looking at just like brand new merchandise, like the brand new One Piece figure that just came out or whatever it is. Always shop around. Always shop around. There has been so many times where I have looked at like 3 or 4 different stores and seen the same figure at each store. And the first store it's like $50. And the second store it's like $35. And then the third store it's $35. And then the fourth store it's $35. I'm like, okay, $35 is the best price that I'm gonna see. And then I buy it, and then I go to the next store and it's $15. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it went from $50 to $15. Like I could have saved more money. And so always shop around, always look around, because there's so many, just such a large volume of these stores in Japan. And they're usually small businesses, they're very competitively priced. And I feel like there's kind of a science to it of knowing, like, this store is kind of located halfway through the mall. That's when you're going to realize, oh, that's the best price. So you're going to buy it at that store. And then that's why the next store has its ones cheaper, is because they're really trying to compete with all the stores in front of them that you've already passed through. So
yeah, I was going to say, go past the stores that are up front. Usually those figure shops, especially in those areas in Akihabara, they're like just mazes and mazes of shops. Oftentimes you won't even realize you've left one shop and you've gone into another shop.
Right.
But the further you get away from the main entrance and the more you get into like the little side streets and the little corner areas is where you probably find the cheapest prices.
Right. And one thing I want to tell anyone that could be listening that's interested in this, it's getting a little bit more mainstream. I've seen several articles about it now, but if you're looking for retro items, you have to shop in Nakano Broadway. Literally right outside Nakano Station, you walk out of the station and there's like this covered street. You walk down that, it's covered with restaurants, whether it's a McDonald's or a Kaiten Sushi, a bunch of different little tiny shops. And then that leads you to a small little mall type area called Nakano Broadway with a big sign that says Nakano Broadway above it. And the first floor is just kind of general merchandise, and then every other floor, second, third, part of the fourth, is all dedicated to anime goods. And it is, it's weird because I almost feel like some of the stores were designed for a Western audience. I mean, there was stuff that really wasn't super popular in Japan being displayed, like things like Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
That's the big one that really sticks to mind. I was kind of blown away when I saw some Cowboy Bebop merchandise. But great pricing on figures, great selection, really helpful staff in a lot of the stores. I know some of the things that I bought that I really enjoy. Like I said, if I'm looking for figures or anything like that for myself, it's usually something pretty retro. I found some great Akira figures from the, I'm not sure from the original release, but older figures that, you know, they're not the prettiest by any means, but because of how that movie had such a large impact on my life, seeing it at a young age, and it kind of adding to the obsession of Japanese culture. I think for both of us, I really loved those figures when I saw them. I said, I can't leave without getting those. I need those in my display case. But it's the big thing when you're looking for those type of anime goods, especially figures. Definitely shop around. Definitely look at every single shop you plan on going to, and then make your decision. 'Cause you're gonna save some money, or you're gonna prevent that emotion of regret when you buy something and you go to the next store and you go, oh, I like that figure better.
Yeah.
That's the same character I just bought, but
yeah.
well, darn,
So people are probably potentially wondering, well, why couldn't you just return it and then go back somewhere else? So
right.
Most people don't realize, but returns are pretty much completely unheard of in Japan. I mean, not just for stuff like that, for like something as simple as clothing.
Right.
Like if you go buy clothing somewhere and you go home and you're like, oh, this doesn't really fit how I want it to, and then you go back and you try to return it, they'll look at you like you're crazy.
Right. And a lot of these figure places, they'll, at least the ones that I went to, they'll speak a little bit of basic English, and they'll tell you, no return, no return. And a lot of that is like because you go to the next store, that's $10 cheaper. They know that that there's a better price out there. Plus, it depletes the value of the item you're buying. There's a lot that goes into it. I think it's kind of crazy to hear that about clothing goods and that kind of stuff, but it makes sense to an extent. You're given every opportunity to try it on and see if it fits and make sure you like it. So don't change your mind. Don't be so fickle. But another thing that I'm always looking for in Japan is just something unique. Whether maybe it's a younger friend of mine that has like a perverted sense of humor, I might go to like a perverted vending machine, which you can find. You'll find them occasionally in Tokyo or places like Osaka. You'll see like a vending machine that's kind of covered up, so you can't really see what's inside it. And my friend and I went to one, and I got a keychain that was the shape of a woman's boob, and my buddy, he got a pair of panties. I don't know if he'll be able to use those, but just something funny like that. I think that maybe bringing someone a pair of panties from a vending machine, unless they really have a certain sense of humor, might not be a great idea, but definitely a unique experience and potentially a great souvenir. There's also a lot of things you can buy that will either show a destination you've been to. Like they have a wonderful series of Starbucks cups I'm sure you're very familiar with at this point in time. That'll have basically for not every major city, but a lot of them throughout Japan. Whether it's Nagoya or Kyoto or Tokyo or Osaka. I have a whole different series of travel mugs, of regular coffee cups. I think those are great souvenirs. I feel kind of guilty thinking that this is a good option, but I think it is kind of like a pro tip. They do, as far as last time I checked, sell all of them at the airport in Narita, or the Starbucks in Narita, which I thought was kind of funny. It's like, oh, I didn't go there, but I could buy that coffee cup. There's also some really great items at places like Arashiyama Monkey Park that'll have like little keychains of the monkeys and postcards of the monkeys. Same thing when you go to Nara. You'll see a lot of Nara-related merchandise with branded with the deer. Um, and then, like I said earlier, I really like buying things for coworkers. Usually, when I go, I try to get all my coworkers the same thing, something really inexpensive, relatively that I think a typical person could enjoy and think is cool. Usually, my go-to is some sort of amulet charm from a shrine that I really enjoy. Typically, it's either going to be like Asakusa or Meiji Jingu. Um, Maybe starting next year, I might have to start getting stuff from Todaiji in Nara because I really think that place is absolutely stunningly beautiful. So that's always a great idea because typically you can get one. They range in price. You can get some really expensive charms. I mean, you could go in there and drop, almost $100 on a charm. But I usually buy like one for about $5 each, and I have about 5 or 6 coworkers, and I want to buy them for, so it's not breaking the bank. Um, and they usually really appreciate it. They usually really, especially if you can find someone, even if it's not a coworker, if it's a relative, um, find something that's relevant to them. Mm-hmm. I had a friend who I think is the worst driver in the history of drivers, and they a few days before I left, they were parked in a parking lot, and I'm parked next to them, and there's like a sidewalk in front of them. And they went to go in reverse and somehow went and drive and like went up on the sidewalk in their Jeep. And I'm just looking at them like, are you okay? Do I need to call someone? Like, I don't think you're drunk. But with that, I found a charm at a shrine that was for good luck while driving. And I thought, like, this is perfect. This person, needs this in their life, and they have put it on their, rear view mirror ever since. It's been on there for 3 years now. So,
hopefully reminding them not to drive over someone.
Yeah, right. Maybe bringing them good luck. But then there's also times to consider, and maybe your family is like this, maybe your family isn't like this. You also want to consider people's thoughts and beliefs, because I almost made the mistake of buying my very religious grandmother a charm, and then after talking to someone else about it, I realized, well, it probably isn't a good gift for them because they don't like the idea of having something that's associated with another religion in their house, especially when they don't really understand it. Yeah. They might be thinking, oh, this is like a false idol or a god. And, that might be silly sounding to some people, but some people are very hold their beliefs very seriously. I'm not gonna trash them for that at all, but do be kind of considerate when you're thinking about items like that. Might not be the best thing for everyone.
Yeah, and I think people have to be more worried about offending people's beliefs and religion on this side versus the Japanese side.
Right.
Over there, it's very much just a tradition.
Philosophy.
They go to the temples and shrines because that's what they've been taught to do. They're not religious, probably a lot less religious than we are on average in America.
Right.
Most of them, if you interview them on the streets, they don't know why. They don't even know. So, most of them don't even know like what the difference between a shrine and a temple is. I mean, there's it's kind of like, when Jay Leno does like the interview of the people out on the street here in New York and ask them these questions. I mean, it's very similar. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of videos. I know Utah does a lot of videos on this. And it's just kind of interesting to see that, like here, I mean, they just say, oh, yeah, we go to this shrine and temple. That's what they do. I think in Korea, knowing some of the Korean people I know, it's very similar. There's like, oh, well, we do this, when we turn a certain age, or this certain temple is where we go for this, but it's not really in their beliefs.
Right.
They don't really believe, it's just a tradition.
I've heard recently, I haven't, verified it or anything, but I've heard that Korea has a pretty large Christian population in it nowadays.
Oh, yeah. It's huge. huge.
That's so interesting to think about? How it didn't. You have Christians in Japan for sure, but I would never say, oh, they have a huge Christian population.
Yeah, it's less than 1%.
Hmm.
So tiny. But I think part of it, and I think that's part of the hopes for a lot of the the missionaries over there in Japan, is the whole group mentality of many of these Asian cultures. That's how it spread so rampantly through Korea.
Right.
It's probably because of the whole group. A couple people in a group, convert or whatever, and then it like just kind of spreads to like through that whole group and then associated groups. I know they're hoping that that'll happen in Japan. Just because it's this whole group, group over individual, but it kind of goes the other way too. Someone might be afraid to have any kind of different ideas, beliefs, or really anything. It could be anything as far as like what profession they choose, that might make them feel like an outsider in their own group.
Right.
So I know that's kind of a pretty big restriction over there on people.
Yeah, as far as other things I've looked at purchasing or had experiences purchasing, I think that you definitely have a lot of great options in Japan as far as souvenirs and fun things to bring back. What a lot of people don't think about is just going to your local grocery store, your convenience store, and picking up some, kind of instant packet spices and things like that. Like that's one of my favorite things to bring back home is, you can get for $5 or so a nice big packet of 4 or 5 sauce packets. It'll be like a spicy mabudofu or like a tantan ramen sauce packet and all sorts of stuff. And one of the things that I tried recently, and maybe it was that desire to be in Japan again, but I got the Nakiru, which is a Michelin star rated ramen restaurant in Atsuka Station, which is right next to Ikebukuro. They have a exclusive 7-Eleven instant ramen bowl, and oh my goodness, it was like the best instant ramen I've ever had. I mean, it wasn't as good as the restaurant, but it was pretty close. I mean, especially the oils and such that they gave to concoct the broth with. I mean, if you had added the regular meat from the restaurant, you really wouldn't notice a big difference. The noodles were great. The broth was amazing. The base meat, because typically in a nakido bowl, you're going to get like the base meat, which is a ground pork, and then you're going to add some like thinly sliced pork on top. The base, ground pork was delicious and spicy. I mean, I bought a few of them. I only bought one for myself, and I was very tempted to just eat the other ones. Like, well, I'm sorry, guys. I know you specifically requested these, but they got lost on the way. They disappeared somehow. But look at things like that. Look at chocolates. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of all the different flavored Kit Kats. I think there's way too many flavors. I was talking to someone recently in Japan and asked them what their favorite flavor was, and I thought it was pretty funny because they just said regular. I was kind of surprised by that with the 1,000 flavors. I mean, you can get them in sake flavored and green tea flavored and strawberry, vanilla, and cheesecake. I mean, just every flavor you can imagine, sweet and savory. But and that kind of brings us into another topic. It's not only do you have the culture of us going there and buying souvenirs, you have a little bit of a different culture as far as Japanese gift giving. And this concept of like omiyage, which I don't know the direct translation for it, but it's basically like cheap gift, isn't it? Like, isn't it kind of like a useless gift? Or I think there was some sort of...
Well, that's in like the way they say it. So like omiyage just means gift, but the way that Japanese people typically present a gift is they'll say, this is just a boring little thing, or this is just a non-consequential little nothing that I, found, and here you go. Here's a gift. That's one of the things that, if you take a Japanese culture class or you're learning the language, It's similar to the way that they like Japanese insults.
Mm.
We could do a whole. There's several different videos on Japanese insults. It's not like in America where you just come out and you're like, blah, f you, f this, you're, and just, go on this tirade of curse words.
Right.
They don't really have curse words. They don't have curse words that are used to insult people. They have this subtle, little way of insulting people.
Right.
And it's kind of one of those weird, cultural things. It's similar with the gifts. It's it would be very rude, very unusual. They would think it would be very strange if you just showed up and said, here's this great gift. I thought you'd love it. This awesome, I think this is just great. You'll love it here. Here's your gift. Which that's kind of, that's somewhat how we would do it here.
It's the American way, right?
I really think you'd like this gift. It's perfect. Here you go. I love it. It's awesome. That's kind of how we are here.
Right.
There you say, this is a boring little thing. Here you go.
Right.
And they're like, oh, you don't have to. You didn't have to.
Well, it kind of emphasizes the fact that it's the thought that counts.
Mm-hmm.
Really. The way I see it, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, and because of that, they have, for the Japanese, giving gifts for like, when they go travel on business or they go see family or, pretty much anytime they go anywhere that's outside of their daily routine on a trip, that they'll go, they'll come to a station. Almost every station has like these shops with, the omiyage gifts, or it's like usually little boxes of different treats and, different areas, different stations will be, famous for certain things. Like in Tokyo, one of the big things is that Tokyo banana.
Right. Which are delicious.
Yeah, they're good. And they'll have, all the boxes with those. And, I don't remember what Nagoya's was, but they had some special, thing. Sendai, everything is blazoned with the Masamune samurai, his crescent moon shaped helmet, or, different depictions of him. So they're all different, but
senbei, like the rice cracker, it's a common omiyage, or like certain like mochi sets. A lot of packaged goods like that are really easy to purchase. And it's funny because sometimes you can find some pretty cheap stuff, but a lot of that prepackaged stuff is pretty expensive sometimes. And it's funny that you're presenting in this manner of, oh, this is this cheap nothing, but like the person knows
it's $100 box,
but it's really not.
Snacks.
And it's very typical to go and, you go to a place like you're traveling from Tokyo to Osaka and you're coming back, you're going to bring your close friends an omiyage, some sort of gift, which maybe certain social groups do it here. I know with my friends, if my buddy was heading to, Colorado, he's not really bringing me back anything.
Yeah.
Maybe nowadays, but not a few years ago. But you don't really see that same, hey, I went to this other part of our country and I brought you back a gift. Maybe close relatives.
Close relatives. Maybe if someone's like watching your dog, and then you're like, oh yeah, I should bring them back something.
Right. Someone you're gonna have like that instant interaction with right as you get home, like a family member. Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting thing, and it still to this day catches me off guard, because I went this most recent time, and one of the first Japanese people I hung out with was my best friend's girlfriend, and I hadn't seen her in a year. We weren't really formally introduced, and we met up prior to my friend arriving, and she brought me omiyage. She's like, this is just something for you. It's so funny because the way she worded it, she was like, oh, I can't eat this. So like, I hope you can enjoy it. But like, I don't really think she meant that. Yeah. I think it just meant like, like this isn't worth anything to me. So I hope that you can benefit from it. That kind of sentiment. So, I really love that concept of, this is a nothing gift. This is a boring gift. This is a simple gift. It's so humble, and It's nice.
They usually say "Tsumara nai mono ga desu ga," or something like that. It's this is just a boring little thing, but here you go.
Right.
Like,
One other thing that I want to talk about just kind of briefly, and this is something I've done every year I've gone to Japan, other than once, the first time, and it was a lesson learned. Whenever I go, I take a carry-on bag and a personal item. Typically, it's going to be like a duffel bag, maximum size I can do as a carry-on, and then I'm going to have a maximum size personal item, typically like a backpack. And then inside one of those bags, I get a duffel bag, a large, I'm talking 48-inch duffel bag that folds up very small. I put that in one of those bags so that way on the way back, I can expand that bag, load all my souvenirs in there, pack it nicely with some clothing, things like that. Keep the valuables or things that are fragile in the carry-on bags. But that way you're not limited on having to carry this big suitcase throughout Japan.
yeah.
You can have 2 small suitcases with a large suitcase tucked inside, so that way you're only making that miserable trip once on the way home, which, the one that I have converts into a backpack, which makes it easier to carry, but makes you stick out even more.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a great idea for foreign travelers to bring a backpack inside their luggage if they're planning on buying a lot of souvenirs, especially if you're buying things like any kind of figurine or a Gundam model or anything like that. Another thing I really want to let people know, if they've never been to Japan, even though this isn't really related to shopping, yeah, it kind of is in a way. If you're doing shopping, especially if you're shopping from like a convenience store or a vending machine, you might find yourself in a situation where you're carrying around trash. There is hardly any public trash cans in Japan. You'll find them in certain places, like some convenience stores will have an accessible trash can. Not everyone, but some convenience stores
just
will.
outside the door.
Mm-hmm. You'll see them in train stations. It's not the same as you would see here, where you're walking down the street and there's a trash can, or you're at the park and there's a trash can. It's not the same way here. So I always recommend bringing a small little backpack that you can use to carry around some trash until you have the ability to throw it away and recycle it. Even if you're taking it back to your hotel or Airbnb, whatever you're using, because carrying around trash all day isn't fun. And then I don't want anyone putting themselves in the situation where they feel like they need to litter this beautiful country because there's not enough trash cans. So, especially with the Olympics coming up, I think they should add some more trash cans to the city, but I doubt they will. So keep that in mind if you listen to this before the Olympics. And you're going to Japan, maybe bring a small little backpack for some of your disposable items.
Yeah, that's something you see almost everybody goes around with, a backpack of some sorts,
right?
Or a bag, like a business style bag, something, just to carry their day-to-day stuff. Because if you're out in the city all day, you need something to be able to carry, various things in.
Right.
Yeah. Talking about the grocery stores, it reminded me, it was kind of interesting. We had, been to Japan so many times. We had lived there, and so the first time that we went on one of our trips, to go back with our church to do some mission work in northern Japan, when we came back, the only thing that we wanted to bring back was like the grocery store stuff, like you were saying, which no one probably ever thinks of. No one probably goes, "Oh, I'm gonna go buy a bunch of groceries." So we literally took like one of our big suitcases into the grocery store and put it on top of the cart because we didn't know how much would fit.
Right.
And went through, and this was like the most wonderful grocery store, I guess, being like in northern Japan, kind of in the area that was hit by the tsunami. And I don't know if they've like subsidized the groceries or if it's just significantly cheaper up there, but this grocery store had everything, and it was like incredibly cheap compared to the stores in the Tokyo area. And we just started loading up stuff, everything from, all the different little, kind of like the Japanese version of Hamburger Helper.
Right.
It's like little, spice packets and different mixes that you can make, different dishes, to like the packets that you use for frying up karage. We got several big like bottles of the sukiyaki mix, the sauce that you cook it all in. We bought tons of those, the chocolate covered almonds, which at the time, like, we couldn't really find them here. And when we did, like, if you went to like one of our Japanese grocery stores, one little box was like maybe $5, and they were like 100 yen over there. So I mean, we just grabbed like whole cases of these things and put them in our suitcase. But yeah, just all kinds of stuff, all the different Kit Kats like you were talking about before, and Pokey, and I mean, just all anything that was non-perishable that we could load up.
Right.
We did, and we had like sauces, big things like the Kewpie mayonnaise and the sauce, and all these different things are just stuff that you can probably get here, but it's like significantly cheaper over there and a lot more variety.
Right. One of the last things that I wanted to talk about a little bit more length, because this one's actually kind of pretty important to me just for personal reasons, is shopping for clothes in Japan. Once again, great souvenir, kind of related to the whole djembe, kind of summer attire you would see male wearing at a festival. But they have a lot of great clothing stores like Uniqlo. They do all sorts of collaborations, whether it's Gundam, Pokemon, Street Fighter, different Disney animations. Just be aware that the sizes are different.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying it's a little special to me, is because for several years going to Japan, I was way too big to fit into any of the Japanese clothing. Even now that I've lost, basically almost 100 pounds, I can fit into Japanese clothing. It's extra large. Still a little short on me because I am 6'5", but it fits close enough to where I can say, yeah, that'll work. And it's great to buy, especially at Uniqlo. I really recommend anyone that's never been to a Uniqlo that has the opportunity to go inside, especially if you like any kind of characters, whether it's something from Disney or something from an anime. They might have a collaboration of it, and they release new ones all the time, and they're very reasonably priced. You can find some stuff in there that's expensive, but then you can find some stuff in there for $7 t-shirts, high quality t-shirts. So, and then if you didn't know, check them out online as well. From the United States, they do shipping. They have some stores here in the United States now, and most of their items are available on their website, which is great.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think is great. Just make sure you're looking at the size. They're usually going to have them, especially if you're looking at kids' sizes. They're going to have them listed out in centimeters.
And measure. Age. I saw some of the stuff you brought back had age, and it was like twice the age that our children.
Yeah, it's typically really. I mean, at least for a 4-acre, it's typically super wrong. I bought a djembe, like I said earlier, for my nephew, your son, who is 7 years old, and I think it said for 14-year-old boys on it, which he's a tall kid, but
not.
He's not anywhere near a 14-year-old type, even a Japanese 14-year-old. I'm sorry.
I mean, we were like this size when we were 14, so
well, maybe we'll see how he turns out. But yeah, definitely keep a closer eye on the centimeters. Measure your children or your family friends or whatever it may be beforehand, or have them send you measurements in inches or whatever it is, and then
shoe
just
size
convert
too.
it.
The shoes are all in centimeters.
Shoes, yeah. Remember, America's a little different. We're not using the metric system like the rest of the world. So, yeah, I think that as long as you're looking for that measurement in centimeters and you're lining that up, use some great clothing options in Japan. Just be careful because, like I said, they do run smaller than our sizes for sure.
Yeah, we were a bit lucky where we were at in Japan. It was pretty difficult at the time. Again, I was significantly bigger when I first moved to Japan the last time. I think I was like a size 38 pants, for most places here in America. But over there, it was almost impossible finding, that size. Even, we came across like a Gap. They'd opened up a Gap in on Morisanda. We're like, oh yes, Gap. They should have, sizes. And I think like the biggest size they had was 36, and it was very limited. And I was like, okay, well that doesn't work. But we finally came across. I mean, thankfully, I was only required to wear like athletic clothes to school. That's typically what all the elementary school teachers wear, is like athletic jumpsuits. So those were all pretty much standard sizes, and you could go to like any sporting good or even some of the the grocery stores that had the clothing stores in them would have a decent selection of pretty large. I mean, I'm wanting to say it went up to like XXXL, and it was our sizes too. Like if you're looking like an Adidas product or a Puma product, they'll always have the tag, and it'll have like all the different sizes in all the different countries. It was like that. So those were easy to find and buy. But we had a hard time finding regular clothes until we came across Eddie Bauer in the Ikebukuro Sunshine City Mall, and they actually pretty much had all the regular sizes, that American one would have, and if they didn't, they could order it. It was the exact same clothing that you get here in America. If you go buy anything at Eddie Bauer here in America, you can flip the tag over and you'll see it's like all written in Japanese as well, which I thought was pretty interesting. I had no clue, Eddie Bauer was big over there. But yeah, that was like a godsend, being able to, get a pair of khakis and a pair of jeans and a jacket. When it came to be winter, we were finding that the jacket we had brought was okay for here because we're not outside all that much. You're usually outside from that short stretch of going from your house to your car, from your car to the store. And over there, we're outside all the time, it seems, whether we're walking to the train station for 20 minutes or, just walking around to find somewhere to eat. Or hanging outside, somewhere, it was, it'd get pretty cold in the winter. And so we were able to buy jackets there, which was pretty nice.
Right. So maybe the last thing we should talk about, and maybe briefly, I think you're a little bit more knowledgeable on this. A lot of places in Japan, whether it's an electronics store, department store, or restaurant, they might have some sort of point card or a membership card, something like that. Can you tell us a little bit about those? What your experience is with those?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest experiences have been with the big electronic store point cards like Yodobashi and Big Camera. They're wonderful. I mean, it's not like the point card systems here. I mean, most of our point, card systems here are very gimmicky. It's mostly for the store to kind of track what you're buying and track, what's selling in which demographic and at which stores, like
keep you loyal to that particular store.
Yeah, trying to keep you loyal to the store. They don't really give you a lot in return. I mean, here one of the popular ones is, for every $100 you spend, you get like 10 cents off a gallon of gas. That's kind of like what they're pushing here nowadays. But over there, depending on the item, like they'll have, it's not like a flat rate across everything. They'll have like a TV that's for sale, and it'll say, okay, well, this TV is normally, $2,500, but we've marked it down to $2,000, but we're also giving you 25%, of that sale price in points on your point card. So then you end up getting, $250 or whatever, some, percentage or whatever back in points. And the points accumulate, you can save them, you can spend them. they always ask you when you go up to the register, if you want to use your points or not. They'll tell you how many points you have, and they give you a little card that you can hand to them anytime, and they'll scan it or whatever and let you know. But I know some of the great things that that I've bought over the years with points. I had a friend come into town, and it was when like the Nintendo 3DS had launched, and they wanted to buy like 4 or 5 Nintendo 3DSs, and like they wanted every release game. There were like 4 or 5 release games, and they wanted a copy for every Nintendo 3DS they bought. So they ended up spending like, I don't know, it was a lot. It was like $2,000 plus on these items to take back. And it happened that it was one of these items where they had like a huge percentage on points. So I ended up getting just I think I got like a really expensive pair of headphones for free off the points. I bought my suitcase later. It was when we were moving back. My suitcase that I had taken with me had totally fallen apart, so I needed a new suitcase. So I bought like $150 suitcase for free with points. Just all kinds of stuff.
Right.
I mean, to me, it seems the prices weren't marked up. Here they'd be like, oh yeah, we'll give you points. So, the prices will end up being more expensive. And over there it didn't seem like the prices were marked up. And everything you bought would give you some points.
Right.
We got a PlayStation for like the time before when we lived back in 2006. When we bought that TV, we got a PlayStation for free with the points off of buying that TV. So it's like, to me, it was a really cool system. I mean, it does kind of generate loyalty because you're going to go back and use your points. But it's something that is useful. It's like a benefit.
Right. Yeah, I know my experience mainly comes from like certain restaurants. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to one of these places, but they'll have like maybe like a members menu and like a regular menu, and they'll be like the same menu but just slightly different pricing. Or if you go to them and you pay like the $5 deposit to get a card, then that time, the next time, and then forward, you get special pricing on some of their products. Or I've seen things that are kind of common here. Like one of my favorite restaurants had like a stamp. I'm sure you remember that. We went to this takoyaki place that had buy 10 get the 11th free. Which you'll see here at places like maybe like an ice cream store or a smaller business, maybe a sandwich shop, something like that. But I definitely thought that point system, kind of card system, which wasn't really like ours. It's similar in a sense, but I like you said, I think a lot of that comes down to just data mining, and it's not really about like, oh, hey, what kind of benefit can we give the customer? What useful thing can they get? Like I think of certain cards of certain companies that'll say like, oh, hey, you get this special sale price if you have our card, and it's like, why can't you just give me the special sale price no matter what? What really about this card is doing anything besides you be giving you my data?
Stuff,
that's all it is you're trading your super valuable data for a 15% or 15-cent discount on cherry tomatoes,
And they've had this point system forever. I mean, they had it back in 2001 and well before that, I'm sure. And back then, things have gradually changed, and I think especially now, like, it's not like this, but before, one of the big draws to Japan as far as buying stuff was like electronics, like TVs, cameras, anything like that. It was significantly cheaper to buy in Japan.
Right.
And even then, they had these point systems. I don't even remember what it was, but I bought several electronics that were like half the price that they would have been here, in Japan back in the early 2000s, and got points. The points you could use for more stuff, and it was just, which added to it being even cheaper.
Yeah, I definitely like that system. I like getting free things and not just getting like a minuscule discount on something. I think that's a pretty cool system.
The menu thing is pretty neat. You're talking about special members menus. I remember when the Gundam Cafe first opened. I don't know if they still do this, but they had a point system where you would gain points every time you went. You get little stamps on a card, and when you reached a certain point, you would get like an officer's card or whatever they call it, and you ranked up, and you can choose whether you were with the Federation or if you were at Xeon. And I remember getting the card. I chose Xeon, of course. Getting a little card and like a little pin, and you could wear your little pin, and you could present your card. And I remember the first time we went back after I gotten that, we showed them the card and the pin, and the whole wait staff for these little girls in like the uniforms from the anime,
Right.
And they did the little salute and said, "Oh, welcome back, captain," or whatever it was, and handed me like the special menu, and it wasn't anything like great. I mean, it was just slightly different, some special food, additional food items that you could get.
Right.
But just the experience, it was neat. It was something kind of neat.
Right. Yeah, definitely that feeling of being part of a special club. It's funny because we were talking earlier about how the Japanese have this group mentality, and the individual isn't as focused as much. But then there's this kind of idea of being in that group. So like it's part of that group mentality, but also like you're special. So it's like some of that individual coming out as well. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to see stuff like that. I'd like to see some more creative, kind of cool stuff like that come and make its way to America. Well, I think it's probably about time to wrap this up. Do you have any other things you want to discuss or add in before we wrap this up?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Well, go shopping in Japan now.
Yeah. Well, like always, it was fun talking to you about a topic we both love and enjoy. For anyone out there listening or watching this video, if you're seeing it on YouTube or any source that you can comment on, you see something or you think of something that you'd want us to discuss in a future episode, feel free to comment down below. Let us know what we're doing that you enjoyed, or topics that we could discuss that you might be interested in, preferably all Japan related in some sense. This topic today was actually brought up to me by a friend. Shout outs to Sebastian. Thanks for the great topic. I appreciate your input. Once again, my name is Chase. This is my brother Chaz Foraker. We're here to talk about our love for Japan, and we really do appreciate you joining us. And we look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.